Welcome to the Know. I'm Ashley.
I'm Mica.
First, we had players calling for boycotts over shaders.
Boycotts!
Well, it's a whole new week, and that means whole new things to freak out about in Destiny 2. This time, it's a drop in sales from the original game.
Some of the early numbers for Destiny 2 are in from the UK, and by outward appearances, it's not doing nearly as well as Destiny 1 did in retail, which naturally means tons of headlines about Destiny 2 flopping.
Well, I bet we can make a good headline.
Destiny 2 dead?
Yes.
Dead to me, Destiny? Yeah, I'm on a roll.
While these early figures don't paint a very pretty picture, it's not the entire picture. So take the freak out down a notch. Let's talk about the numbers first. What people are freaking out about exactly.
These numbers come out of the UK, where retail watchdog GfK Chart Track has released last week's top 10 charts of physical game sales. That list obviously includes Destiny 2, which is now the biggest launch of the year in the UK so far, according to the numbers.
Oh, well. While GfK doesn't always release the actual number of sales, they do usually offer a few points of comparison, and the one they've offered for Destiny 2 is that it had a bigger launch in the UK than anything else in 2017, including Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Horizon Zero Dawn, and Ghost Recon Wildlands. So we could just stop there and call the whole thing a success, right?
However, the GfK data also includes mention of another important stat. Even though Destiny 2 is the biggest launch of the year so far in the UK, sales versus the first week of Destiny 1's launch are down 58%.
Oh, that's a lot. That's actually worse than when Infinite Warfare came out and saw a 50% drop, or well, 50-ish% drop at retailers versus the previous year's Call of Duty Black Ops 3.
Although GfK didn't include the numbers in their report, it looks like a poster on NeoGAF, who's had reliable retail information in the past, did post what might be some of the actual numbers.
You're doing good work, NeoGAF.
Thank you, good anonymous sir. According to the data they had on hand, Destiny 2 sold 101,000 copies on the PS4 and 73,000 copies on the Xbox One, versus 192,000 and 150,000 for Destiny 1, respectively.
So at first glance, this doesn't sound too great for Destiny. Sure, there are a lot of places jumping all over it, as you would expect, but there are a few important things to note. For one, this no longer includes last-gen platforms.
Those using current-gen consoles don't have much reason to look back, so it's easy to forget, but Destiny was huge on last-generation consoles. We're talking about the 360 and the PS3.
Oh,
and
those old things.
Those things that are collecting dust, and you know, it supported them all the way up until the release of the last expansion pack, Rise of Iron.
That was the first expansion that last-gen consoles didn't get. That lasting support for the Xbox 360 and PS3 not only boosted the player base, estimates place the physical copies sold to last-generation players around 3 to 4 million, so that's a lot. But it also has been blamed for hamstringing the first game, which resulted in technical limitations like what they couldn't do, which is why Destiny eventually had to kind of leave it behind.
Considering how long those players were still on Destiny 1, it's quite likely some of them still haven't made the jump to the next gen yet.
Which is understandable. Look,
yeah.
Consoles cost money. If you don't care about being on the cutting edge and you've been on last-gen consoles up to this point, you may not have cared enough to upgrade yet, and even if now you have a reason to care, it can take time to save up for the new hardware. That's, you know, a whole process.
Fair. So that's the first major caveat. And the second is that Destiny 2 launched on a Wednesday, as opposed to a Tuesday, taking away one full day at retail in its first week.
Yeah, now that wouldn't account for a 58% drop. It didn't stop other late week arrivals like Crash from absolutely dominating their launch weeks anyway, but it would account for something, especially with 2 platforms being left out this time around and PC not coming around until next month.
But the most importantly of all, which is why I stressed it earlier in this read, these figures don't include digital sales.
Of course, they didn't the first time either.
No. It's worth noting that the video game market is an entirely different animal than it was way back in 2014.
Oh, 2014!
My God, the
remember
ancient
those days.
times. It was a whole... Just digital sales have picked up like crazy across the medium, even in the 3 years since Destiny 1 released in 2014.
Since then, we've seen them account for a much larger percentage of overall video game sales, which actually goes as high as 74% of all video game sales in the US now, and,
wow.
And some publishers are estimating that rising to 85% in the next year or so.
Wow! But of course, we're talking about the UK here, and in places where bandwidth is an issue, these numbers won't be quite as strong. However, even in the UK, the rise of digital sales has been rising, with some recent reports attributing about 60% of the UK's game sales to be digital versus box.
Now, all that being said, even if Destiny 2's numbers are really strong digitally in the UK, it would be hard to make up for that 58% dip. But when you remove the last generation console sales, the dip from PS4 and Xbox One at retail actually seems about in line with growth of digital.
Either way, that 58% number has a lot of influencing factors, so it's painting with a broad brush to make the conclusion that Destiny 2 is doing way worse than Destiny 1 when it comes to sales.
I mean, in raw numbers, yes. Comparatively, maybe not so much. I mean, could it be that the falling physical sales at retail also spelled double on the digital front? That's another question.
Absolutely. We just don't know enough to say at this point if that's the case, however. And by other accounts, the game is performing damn well.
Yeah, we do have some other numbers from the weekend, and those come from Bungie themselves, who tweeted they had over 1.2 million concurrents online across PS4 and Xbox One, which is a pretty impressive, staggering number for opening weekend.
That's a crap ton of Guardians.
That's a lot, because that's all online at once.
Yeah.
And that's what concurrent means.
And it's also a big deal, especially when you think about the fact that PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, basically the most talked about surprise hit of the year, took since March to finally climb its way to 1 million concurrents last week. And Destiny did it in less than a week.
Yeah, so obviously, not apples to apples. PUBG is on one platform, Destiny 2 is on 2, and is now an established franchise and had huge marketing support, etc. But it is significant. It does tell of just how big Destiny 2's early audience is, and how big it could get once you add PC to the mix next month.
So no, we don't have proof that Destiny 2 is flopping. At the moment, all we have is one data point in one territory. It'll be interesting to see if this proves out over time and what Activision does in regards to press releases.
That's where the company really likes to show off in terms of sales. They do it almost every year with Call of Duty, well, except for Infinite Warfare, and we know why that's the case. Yes. And they do it fairly regularly with Overwatch, and they constantly updated Destiny 1's player count as well.
If they keep silent about specific numbers, then we'll know that it might not be performing as hot as the first game did.
But until then, I mean, does it matter to you? If you're playing and you can find people to play with, do you care about how many copies it's selling or how many concurrents it's got as long as it's good? Or not.
There's 1.2 million people out there for you to play with right now, concurrently.
Right this very moment.
Go.
What do you think of reports that Destiny 2 has taken a dip in sales? Let us know in the comments.
For future updates on all kinds of Destiny 2 speculation, remember to like this video, and if you're new around here, subscribe to the know. Da-da-da. According to the data they had on hand, Destiny 2 sold 101,000 copies on PS4 and 73 copies on the Xbox. 73
copies.
Has a lot of influencing factors, so it's painting with a broad brush to make the conclusion.